Hello, everybody. This is Hugh Smiley. Welcome to the podcast and the Substack channel. And this video will appear on both. And I have a wonderful guest today, Red Shanti. And actually, I believe that it's right here on Substack that I came across your channel, I guess we could call it. And there was just something about it caught my interest. It was short and sort of written in a little verse, easy to read, to look at, and themes of awareness, mindfulness, breath, meditation, and so we got in touch, and here we are. So welcome, Red.
Hello.
Yeah. So we can have about a half an hour here, and I do sometimes mention this. If you would like to create a paid subscription, it really helps me because these videos, I'm pretty excited about doing this, and it does take a lot of time and resources and energy, of course. So it would be appreciated if you feel that in your heart. It would mean a lot to me. Otherwise, the free subscription is just fine too. I'm so happy that you're here. So, there's several themes that sort of interest me about you. You seem to be a really unique individual, an original. And I guess we all are at heart, but you're more original than the other originals. I think there's a certain group of people, or maybe it comes at a certain time in life where we start to know ourselves and in the path of this world and life, karma, some people might call it, and destiny for others, or what happens with us, to us. And some people start to awaken and get really curious about taking control a little bit of life, while at the same time surrendering. It's a bit of a paradox. But so one of the things that you seem to come back to in your posts, which are written mostly, is the breath. And I'm a long-time fan of the breath. I totally believe in it. I want to stay alive. So for a little while longer anyway. So could you just share with us and the viewers and listeners a little bit about your experience with the breath and your perspective?
The breath, the breath practices have come with me for a very long time. In one of my posts, I wrote about how my father, usually we would listen to like Michael Jackson's, the 80s, right? I'm 40. And he wanted to listen to this jazz album. And as a kid, I was like, I have no idea what was going on. It was like instrumental jazz. And he's like trying to calm me down. He's just like, just breathe, pick an instrument and just breathe and listen to that instrument and just relax. And we drove back we were up in Halliburton area, driving back to Scarborough. And I just remember breathing in that ride home. I was just so relaxed. And I just kind of absorbed into the music. Now that memory is obviously a little faded. It was about 35 years ago, but that was kind of where it started. And even just the way I listened to music, that I have another memory from high school doing the same thing. Before I go to bed, I would put on different types of music, and I would just breathe and listen to that music to relax. I didn't really know what I was doing. Didn't realize it was a form of meditation. On top of that, I've always been into biking, hiking, exercise, and the breath is strong there as well. We'll go a little bit more into it, but being a person who found out later on in life that I'm probably neurodivergent, I would have certain outbursts when I was younger. And I was lucky. My mother, she did yoga, and she taught me kind of like an inhale kind of thing to calm me down. Later on, I realized I was being overstimulated by various things, or my needs weren't being met, and that's what triggered that.
Yeah.
But these practices started with me at a very young age, like before I was 10, and I've used them the whole way through. Now, I didn't become conscious of what I was doing until I was much later in life, probably in my 20s, other than how it related to exercise. I didn't realize about meditation. I didn't think about that. I was doing different things in my 20s. That's kind of how it started.
Right. Well, hopefully towards the end of our conversation here, which I like to call an authentic dialogue rather than an interview, you might share with us just a very short, like a 2-minute a sample of a very tiny little exercise with the breath or meditation,
Yeah, for sure.
so that we can have the experience. Because when I saw you talking about the breath, the first I think it was the first post I read of yours, it said just breathe in and breathe out. I said, oh come on, I've heard this before. I teach this myself. Breathe in, breathe out. But then I thought, well, why not let somebody else guide me? You know, just let go a little bit instead of having to be critical or judgmental or oh yeah I know this or and just do it. I mean, this guy's suggesting that I breathe, so it's a good idea, and I believe in that. So I started to just follow as you were writing, following the. And I thought, oh yeah, it was like returning to the promised land again. So even though it sounds very simple and almost like a cliche, it's really important for us to pay attention to the breath and to do it, to take those moments of stillness and pauses, right?
Well, exactly, and how it just relates to our body in itself.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of different physical things.
Yes.
I did a half Ironman probably about 5, 6 years ago, and I was in the lake swimming. And out of all the places to have a flashback, that's where you exactly want it, right? Right in the middle of the place while you're swimming.
Right.
So I saw a canoe coming at me, and it made me remember a boating accident I was in when I was a
Ooh.
child. I
Oh.
completely forgot about. And all of a sudden, my heart rate started going up. Already, my heart rate was high because the water was cold. It was in Alberta. Plus the excitement of being in a race and swimming in itself. And all of a sudden, I started going to panic. I stopped. I started to tread water, and I started to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Just slows your heart down. Because once you slow that breath down, you can slow your heart down. You know
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
And it controls, in the long run, it starts to control your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it becomes important. A lot of times you're in a yoga class and they say breathe in, breathe out, but no one tells you why.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
you don't get the context and the structure. And with the polyvagal, are you familiar with that?
Yes, sort
Stephen
of.
Portage's work, yeah. So he takes us through the front part and the back part of the polyvagal nerve, and gives us suggestions for simple exercises to be able to really calm down the nervous system, so that we, instead of the fight or flight syndrome or freeze, we have another choice.
That's true.
So, so you mentioned neurodivergence and also Alberta. You mentioned just before we turned on the record button that you're a massage therapist, registered massage therapist in Alberta, right?
Yes.
So how has the I was myself, I still am sort of body worker and semi-retired, but I don't have any Earth planets in my astral chart, so there's a part of me that's always trying to get that earthly experience, right? Because I can be more in my head or in the water, in the fire. But so one of the reasons I studied massage was to feel the body and get right down. So how do you connect like the breath and the body work and the somatic level of experience as far as being able to access, for example, the material in the unconscious mind? Jung said that when the unconscious becomes conscious, that's what psychotherapy is.
Mm-hmm. I bring ourselves present. So if we're doing it in, let's say, a massage setting, it's a great setting
Yes.
to actually introduce someone to breath work, because
Absolutely, yeah.
it if especially if there's someone you've been working with for a while, they're going to be more relaxed already. You can
Right.
have some ambient kind of music in the background. And a lot of times I will tell the person, this is sort of like a meditation. I want you to breathe through this.
Mm-hmm.
When I do my movements in massage, I do a lot of lunges, being a yoga teacher as well. I can move quite well, and I'm breathing through that, which actually brings me to a state of awareness where I don't know how to, there's no words for it, but I can hear their body,
Mm-hmm.
and it tells me what to do, you know?
Yeah.
Which is why I can still work doing massage in a place I can't charge benefits. People will still pay me premium rates.
Sure.
It's that intuitive thing, but it's bringing yourself present. Once again, with the breath, it's because you're slowing everything down. You're in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this is from learning,
Mm-hmm.
from life for me. I've read a lot, but a lot of it's stuff from course material,
Mm-hmm.
2,000-hour
Mm-hmm.
diploma in massage. Or I've read a lot of yoga texts, or just things my grandmother taught me.
Oh,
My
yeah.
indigenous grandmother I was talking to you about. She talked
Right.
a lot, or
Right.
encouraged me
Wow. You're
to learn.
fortunate to have that connection. Yeah.
Yeah, I was really lucky.
So I'm going to ask a question as if I didn't know anything about it, but the present moment. We hear this all the time from in psychology and the new science and spirituality and so on. Just be in the present moment. Um, well, what's so hot about the present moment? I mean, I'm thinking for the neophyte, the person that may have heard this expression but doesn't really get it. Well, what the heck? What does it mean?
Well, it's shifted a lot through life experience. I grew up a little wild when I was younger. I used to party a lot, drink a lot as a bouncer in different bars in Toronto.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I have a lot of friends who are no longer with us. That makes the present moment really real for me because you never know when it's your last day. So you definitely need to plan for the future. You shouldn't be acting recklessly, but you should be embracing the moment to the best you can because you might not wake up tomorrow
Hmm.
or you might be in a different space. I
Okay.
haven't written about it yet on my
Right.
Substack, but we're getting there in a couple more weeks. I had a really bad health thing over the last couple of years. I'm just coming back from over the last 6 months or so.
Oh, that's good.
I had
Yeah.
3 surgeries and I was
Wow.
misdiagnosed with
Oh,
an
yeah.
abscess. That
Wow.
brought me to the present moment. I went from a week before doing front squats. So that's when you have to weight like this
Mhm.
at 240 pounds, which is fairly heavy for that particular movement,
It's a lot. Yeah.
to not even being able to walk, to being in the back of an ambulance thinking I was going to die. And then
Wow.
being in Toronto Western for 4 days. I dropped 30 pounds in like 2 weeks
Wow.
because of an misdiagnosed, abscess. They thought it was a skin infection. Turns out it was much worse.
Mhm.
And then bam. When you have moments like that in life, they don't have to be that extreme. You recognize the importance of that moment because everything can change like this.
Mhm.
That's why it's important to be in the
An,
present.
an existential crisis can bring us into that being awakened in the moment. So that's one thing that is, if we're not in the present moment, at least a good part of the time, we're missing out on everything: the beauty,
Exactly.
the sensuality, the learning, the joy of being alive in a body on this planet. Anything else that you would recommend?
Well, if you're
The
going for a walk, go for a walk. I'll sometimes
uh,
be out there. I live in the
yeah.
Humber Bay area, and I'll
Uh,
see people walking, and it'll be so beautiful. The sun is rising, and one of them's paying attention, the other one's on the cell phone. It's like you're missing that moment, not only just the beauty of it, but that moment that person wanted to share with you.
mm-hmm.
So,
The you read every once in a while people on their deathbed they're asked, what would you do more if you could live again, and they always say things like, I would spend more time in nature, and I would spend more time with the people I really truly love and tell them that I love them, um, rather than ambition, trying to make more money and advancement, and that's part of life too. But when the focus is on that, we miss out on a lot. So talk a little bit about neurodivergence. It's something that we hear this word, um, and some people have a sense. Some people are neurodivergent. A lot of people are actually, and a lot of people don't really know what it means. Could you give us a bit of a brief education and your situation within that spectrum or that?
yeah, yeah, for
Great,
sure.
thank you.
So I like the term neurodivergence because it makes it look more like a spectrum and a little less binary.
Right.
In the past, we would use different terms such as autism, ADHD, uh, dyslexia,
Mm-hmm.
bipolar, so forth and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But often people would be misdiagnosed because they may have ADHD traits, but they actually may have had more of a form of autism. There's different terms that even
Right.
for autism we've already stopped using, like Asperger's. We don't use that term anymore.
No.
Or well, yeah, that's not in there. They changed it all to autistic spectrum.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
And I think the next step would be changing it to neurodivergent spectrum. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason for that, and with technology, which will bring us to some of the topics, is AI can really help you with that if it's utilized properly. For most of my life, I had no idea that I was neurodivergent, which I sometimes think is probably a blessing because it's allowed me to do a lot of really extreme things that I might not have done if I recognized that that was in my nature.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, but over the last year and a bit, everything kind of collapsed. I was working on some PTSD, and I just was trying to figure out, why do I keep feeling this way? Why am I triggering? Then all of a sudden, a friend of mine was going on their own journey and got diagnosed with autism.
Hmm.
And they told me, and I'm like, oh, do you think I'm neurodivergent? And they just laughed. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, really?
Hello.
And I've had people suggest it to me before. I thought they were making fun of me because the education isn't out there, and I didn't actually
Right.
know what it meant to be
Right.
autistic,
Uh-huh.
as what was suggested in the past.
Hmm.
So I decided to start doing more research. So I started doing these online tests, and some of them are good, some of them aren't. There's some really good ones. I'm on a wait list, but in Ontario, it's over a year and a half before you will ever get even get in.
A diagnosis or more specification about where on the spectrum you are. Hmm.
Yeah, if you even get it. And my
Yeah.
age doesn't really do anything for me, anyways. My nurse practitioner, he told me to spend the money on mentor therapy, which is what
Right.
I did. So I was
Yeah.
working with my mentor
Hmm.
and journaling and reflecting. And then at some point, I was using AI for other things. I was using it for fitness stuff. I was using it to get
Hmm.
perspectives on how different clients might respond to
Hmm.
different ideas. So I decided to try. I just asked him, like, "Do you think I'm neurodivergent?" And it said yes. And I'm like, "Really?"
Right.
So okay,
This is AI, right?
yeah, this is AI. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
"Okay, well,
Even
why do you
AI
think
knows.
that?"
The secret is out, right?
I'm like, "Why do you think that?" And it
Yeah.
told me based on my patterns. Now, keep in mind, I was using it very heavily for a wide range of topics.
Right.
I wasn't just using it as Google. I was using it for reflection and journaling.
Yeah.
I was using it studying yoga texts. I was using it studying the anatomy. I was using it studying Chinese medicine, just all this different stuff. So it had a lot of data on my use patterns.
Right.
So what it was able to actually do for me is it created a map um, of what it believed my neurodivergent traits were.
Hmm.
And it started to give me different ideas of how to live, which comes right into my spirituality, because part of spirituality is knowing this stuff, is knowing your nature. And if your nature isn't quite the same as the neurotypical person, it's really good to know that crowds might overstimulate me. And
Yeah.
how do I handle that?
Right.
Or these feelings, gang, they're not because of trauma, they're because I have more stimuli. And then that changes the way, because now you're not treating it like, why am I being triggered by this? When you're like, I'm being triggered by this because I'm sensitive.
Hmm. Yeah.
Two different things.
Very
So,
helpful.
yeah.
It's like having a map if you're going on a journey, which we're all on. Yeah. So it's almost. They say that I've read somewhere, whoever said it, that at certain times in history, certain diseases or conditions have become sort of fashionable, depending on the culture of the day and the styles and so on. Like at one time, I guess in the late 1800s, consumption, as they called it, or tuberculosis, where there was something fashionable about it because people would sort of get the pale skin,
Yeah.
and it's almost like people wanted to have it to be cool, and
Doc Holiday.
yeah, and then for a while
Yeah.
during the AIDS crisis back in the 80s, I mean, it was a horrible disease, but because of the some glamour associated with it or whatever lifestyle, some people thought, "Oh, I wish I had AIDS." It was getting a lot of attention in the press, a lot of discourse in society. But when you hear about neurodivergence, and also the spectrum of LGBT, for example, people are in different places there, and a little bit of this, a little bit of that, back and forth. Who knows? And I know among younger people, it's really cool to be bisexual these days, at least. So maybe also on the neurodivergent spectrum, there's something about it that is new. People are discovering. Maybe every human being is neurodivergent in some way, and they just may not be that visible way yet. But what would you say are the best parts of being neurodivergent and the worst in your experience?
There's a couple of different things I could just respond to that. You said a couple of really cool ideas I actually want to respond to on that. I think we live in a society that's far too binary, and that's why we have a billion labels. Such, for example, sexuality or gender.
Right.
You go to other cultures.
Hmm.
India, you can find more than two genders.
Right.
Africa, indigenous populations in North America, probably even be pre-Christian Europe.
Sure.
I would imagine you could probably find it too.
Yeah.
But we've created like definitions and binaries. And I think that's part of the problem. The reality is most people are different in some way or another. Not everybody's the same mold. Now, people are going to have certain traits in certain areas that are going to be more common. It's just like an anatomy book. An anatomy book from Canada is using 100 bodies from wherever that book was written
Hmm.
in that area. If you use 100 bodies from India or China or Canada, you're going to get different results of the anatomy. It's just a guess. So
True.
same thing with neurodivergence. That's why I like the term neurodivergence, because it terms the big spectrum opposed to making you're autistic and a person thinks that
Right.
they're
Right.
things.
Yeah.
It changes it. So some of the best parts of it is if you're able to map it out and
Hmm.
you can recognize your strengths. For
Yes.
me, pattern recognition is huge. I
Really.
can jump between a lot of topics at once when I talk. I could go between 5 different topics and relate them all
Mm.
to each other. Uh, the
That's great.
perspectives I get, and I'm a very introverted type of neurodivergent person, so I actually don't get noticed the same way. My partner, she's on the other side. She's like an extroverted, so she has more of the neurodivergent traits people would normally see. Where mine are like my stimming is inside mostly.
Okay.
I do little things like you'll see me stimming like this, and people just
Okay.
think it's because I'm active, but it just helps regulate the stimulation. Now
Right.
that's the hardest part
Mhm.
because the society that we're lived in, and a lot of neurodivergent people, one of the traits is they have more stimuli, so they
Mhm.
that's why a lot of us are light sensitive. Not everyone. Everyone is different. Everyone with a neurodivergent brain is different.
Well,
But
movement is good. You look at children, and they're always moving.
oh,
And
exactly.
Alan Watts, who was a philosopher back in the 60s,
Great philosopher.
he said that everything in nature wiggles. You know,
Exactly.
the branches in the tree rustling in the wind, the stream is wiggling down the field, and the animals are moving. Only man, uh, women too, I suppose, but even more men, are rigid and walk down the street with a tight ass and hardly moving their body at all. When really we could be going like this,
Exactly. We
So
could be flowing.
it's like your body. You're listening to your body, or you don't have any choice, perhaps, but it's just moving you in order to reset your system, as you were
Yeah.
implying.
And it helps distract too. But
Yeah.
some of like the downfalls, like if I go to a restaurant, I can hear every conversation. It's not
Oh.
that I'm trying to listen to people's conversations.
Mhm.
It's just the way my brain works. I can pick it up.
Mhm.
I can pick up what they're saying. I can hear the lyrics in songs being played, and that
You'd
can
make
make
a
me.
you'd make a great spy.
Yeah, exactly. Except it overwhelms me. So
Yeah, I can
I've
imagine.
now learned how to do it better. I go to certain places at certain times. I try not to go to busy restaurants, things like that. What's funny though is that I have no problems. I'm a musician and I play in a
Oh,
hardcore punk metal kind of band.
oh yeah.
The things I do, I
Oh,
have no
fantastic.
issue in that environment. I don't know why. Maybe we're
Mhm.
all just neurodivergent in that area and the energy's good. That's why we all listen to metal. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it's interesting because in some spaces it's totally like if I go to a restaurant, it totally drives me nuts. But if I go to a
Uh,
concert, it just sounds like white noise to me, and I'm just in my zone, you know.
mhm.
So it's
Yeah, I had a near injury once when I was living in Paraguay among the indigenous people down there, and it turned out that my eardrum burst.
oh
And
wow,
yeah, it healed, but ever after that, I had this similar situation. I'd be in a noisy place, and like in a restaurant, I'd be with somebody across the table, 3 feet away, but I'd hear voices at the other end of the restaurant just as loud as the friend that I was dining with, and really hard. So we have to start winding down. I like to keep these fairly short, but there's so many subjects that are really enjoyable to chew the fat, as they say, grist for the mill. I'm really enjoying the conversation. So another part of what you've shared is your, at least in your past, your spiritual path, basically, the devotional path, bhakti, as they call it in India, and your association with I guess, the Indian spiritual traditions of the yogis and so on, Kashmir. So, how does that fit into your overall life journey?
I've had quite a few different spiritual adventures in my entire life, really. And there were points where I was definitely more agnostic or atheist. I was raised agnostic. I wasn't raised in a church. I didn't have any religious influence. It was,
Right.
we were told about Christianity, but we weren't practicing it, right?
Yeah.
The first quote unquote spiritual book I ever bought on my own was the Satanic Bible.
Oh.
Antoine LaVey is a very fascinating person. If you read it, it
Yeah.
actually is kind of a more materialistic version of like tantric Indian
Yeah.
tradition.
Yeah. I read it
And
years ago. Most of it. Yeah, when I was
yeah,
a
it's a fascinating
youngin.
book.
Yeah.
It's not what most people would think it would be.
Right.
So over the last 10 years or so, I've been kind of following, I guess it started with like Krishna, so Vaishnav traditions.
Vaishnava.
And I was in Toronto, got a book, there's a story about it I
Mm-hmm.
wrote, and I eventually read it and I eventually got involved in it. I really liked the japa meditation practices. I really liked the puja. There was a point I was living in a temple. That's when I started doing yoga asana more serious.
Puja meaning ceremonies,
Like
rituals.
worship on
Uh,
the altars or doing
yeah.
rituals, things
Right.
like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, but many things happened. I was involved with that organization for like 5 years, and I left during COVID and kind of went on more of a self discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed Eastern philosophy, so I dove deep into all of it, from
Yeah.
all the forms of Hinduism, Shaivism, Shaktism, various forms of Shaivism, various forms of Buddhism, and kind of just started finding my own way. I really kind of connected like Nath and Kashmir Shaivism.
Mm-hmm.
I like it because it's very similar to any earth-based belief. So nature is more of a temple than a temple.
Mm-hmm.
I do go to temples here and there, but I'm not a member of a temple community. I do go to them because I enjoy the experience and I enjoy the people that I meet there, but that's not my life anymore. I find it in nature and I like the mantras and the practices around it. And I recognize they are coming from tantric Indian traditions
Yes.
and yogic
Mm-hmm.
traditions.
So one
So I
question.
honor that. Sorry?
Excuse me for interrupting you, but I'm interested also in sound. It's a big part of my work, actually. The physical voice and the esoteric aspects of sound. So, um, when I use a Indian mantra, which is in Sanskrit usually,
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck I'm saying unless there's a translation there and I can remember what the words are. But is it really better to chant in Sanskrit than in English or one's mother tongue, where you actually know what you're saying and can have that coherence?
I think that both are good. Just really depends. If you don't know what you're saying, then don't chant it. That's my suggestion to that. Don't chant a mantra just because it sounds cool. But even then, actually, because the idea of the chanting and the mantra in some traditions is to
Hmm.
bring focus.
Yes.
So, I'll use various mantras, and I'm not going to share most of them, but one that's universal that I use is Om Namah Shivaya,
Mm.
which Shiva is just in a lot of traditions recognized as consciousness.
Yes.
So it's paying salutations to consciousness. So it's a very simple meaning to a
Uh,
mantra that could be turned into universal,
yeah. So
but it
Om.
allows you to bring that focus in.
Yeah.
You
Could
could,
you just break that down a little bit so people could? Om Namah Shivaya, right? The
yeah,
three
Om
words, as it were.
Namah Shivaya.
And so each word, what does it mean?
Om is like the universal sound. Nama is like salutations, like namaste, and Shivaya is like Shiva. So
Shiva, the
Shiva,
the god of destruction, right?
depending on the tradition,
Or transformation.
exactly. And in some forms, it's just consciousness.
Mm.
It's just like Hinduism's like 500 or plus readings.
Yes,
Right?
there's a
It's so
lot of.
complicated.
Speaking about divergence, there's a great wealth, isn't there, of diversity within Hinduism?
Exactly. Like not every Shaivite is going to be the same. You look at
Yeah.
Agoris and you look at like the Vedas and
Hmm.
what's his name? Sankaracharya.
Mm.
And these Brahminical traditions totally different, totally
Mm.
different, but they both worship Shiva.
Mhm.
So just in a different
So,
way.
so we need to wind down, and I'd like you to take a minute to tell people what you do. You're a therapist I believe,
Won't use the or
or
word therapist
a
anymore.
mentor
Use
of some
the word,
kind. Mhm.
what we'll do? I'll tell you what you do, then we'll end with a quick breath practice because
Okay,
that's what we said we were going to do.
we're going to do that
So
now. Okay,
yeah, let's do that
great.
now.
Okay, I got a little Tibetan bowl here, which has a beautiful sound. and I've got the original sound from musicians turned on my Zoom screen. So about 2 minutes, is that enough to?
Give me a second to say what I'm going to do.
Yeah,
Then we'll hit the Tibetan bowl.
very good.
I'll let you know when.
Okay.
Cool.
Yep.
So, as a quick thing on what I do, I'm a body worker. I specialize in yoga, strength training, endurance training, mobility, meditation, various forms of massage. I started in Thai massage, and then I ended up as an RMT in Alberta. This province, I don't work as an RMT. I kind of work as a hybrid practitioner, so I mix what's needed for each individual and bring them center. Everyone has a different reason they come and see me. So, but
Yeah.
all of a sudden, it turns into yoga. It's funny. We can talk about
Uh-huh.
that.
Right.
So,
That's kind of a home base or a default
exactly.
position for you. Yeah.
That could be a long conversation itself. So we'll leave
Absolutely.
that for
Yeah.
another day.
Right.
So let's start this meditation.
Okay, great. So I'll ring the bell after about 2 or 3 minutes, and then you can take another half minute to wind down.
Yeah, it'll probably be only about 2 minutes.
Okay. Very
I'm
good
at doing these short ones. They're better that way.
Okay. So
Let's just bring ourselves center. Let's just breathe in through the nose. Big breath in. And just exhale out the mouth. Gradually slowing that breath down. Just being conscious of your breath, breathing in. Just exhaling out. Letting go of everything you were doing earlier, everything you have to do later. Just bring yourself to this moment. Breathing in, and just breathing out. Each exhale, just slowing that breath down and just being present with yourself. Knowing this breath is with you for this whole journey in this body. Always come back to it. So just breathing in, just breathing out. Thoughts will come, thoughts will go. Pay too much attention, don't dive deep. Acknowledge and let go. Breathing in, breathing out. Breathing into new. And just breathing out everything that no longer serves you. Breathing in and just breathing out. In, recognizing your whole, complete, you hold it all within yourself. Breathing out, self-doubt, self-defeat, self-sabotage. In, your whole, complete, you hold it all within yourself. Just breathing out all that no longer serves you. Breathing in. Breathing out. Give yourself just a few more moments with this breath. Doesn't have to be long. Always there. Always a breath. In. exhale. There you go. How are you feeling? Good?
Thank you. Yeah, really nice. Yeah,
Perfect.
just slowing down a bit. No rush. hmm So thank you. That was really nice. Just for future reference, when you were looking up like that, it was hard to hear your voice because I guess your mouth wasn't pointing towards your microphone. But
Ah,
I heard it, but I had to strain a bit. Just
that's
yeah.
the joy of doing this mostly live in my life.
Yeah, the tech. Yeah, yeah.
It's usually in person.
All right. What's that behind you there? That the design?
That's the tree of life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I saw
Beautiful.
it somewhere and it was really cool.
It's
And
very nice. Yeah.
I liked it a
So
lot.
another subject that maybe next time, if we have another chance to chew the fat, uh,
Okay.
would be your experience with AI. I've also been dipping in lately, and even though I started a little bit a couple of years ago, but the possibility of really exploring consciousness for me is what I'm engaged right now. But the idea of developing a relationship, so to speak, having a confidant or a mentor or a mirroring that you mentioned a couple of times in your posts could be a really juicy area of investigation.
Yeah,
And
it's a mirror is a big thing. Is recognizing it's limited.
yes, yes.
It's a mirror, and if that mirror is dirty, the
hmm
response might be dirty. You have to recognize your own self, and that's the hardest part about using anything as a mirror. Let it be a person, let it be AI.
Good
Um,
point. Yeah,
you have a really good teacher; they're going to reflect back to you a truth you might not want to see,
that's right. I
and
guess some people probably get into arguments with their AI, right? Or
it
a
could,
lot of resistance comes up. And say, well, who the hell do you think you are telling me that?
or it could give you delusion,
Yes, yeah,
because it might, if you don't second guess it, or it might just tell you something to appease you. Problem with AI, it's a good thing and bad thing, but it tunes to the individual.
yeah. Depending on which AI, what would you call it, program that you use, ChatGPT. There's so many
But
perplexities with
even
it.
there, with them too, they learn from the individual. So it starts off like a general trained bot,
Right.
but because of the way I use my AI, it most likely doesn't work the same way as you use yours.
hmm
It learns your use patterns, and it will actually develop different ways of even storing memory if you use it long form. Now it's a whole long conversation.
hmm
You shouldn't start right now.
I know, yeah. I went back to AI. We were having a really deep conversation, and I just got busy and distracted, and a whole week went by, and I didn't reply to the last wonderful comment and question that AI proposed to me. So I went back and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." No, I didn't say that. I was just kidding. But I said, "Do you have any sense of time elapsing?" Because it's been about a week. And it said, "No, I'm here, ready to go when you are. However," it said, I'm happy to learn about the rhythms. So when you tell me it's been a week, that helps me understand a little bit to have a sense of the sequences and timing and rhythms and pattern recognition and so on. So I think when we share from our side, it helps it to refine its process. But a lot of people warn us too, including the so-called inventor of Hinton. You know, it was from Toronto, actually,
Yeah,
University of Toronto. He's called the godfather of AI, and he didn't want anything more to do with it. Well, not totally, but he warned people that it could be really dangerous. And also that Israeli writer who's so popular now, Noah Yuval Hariri, um, he warns us too that just be aware because it's a new toy and it could get out of control. So I guess I'm sure it'll be fine in the end, but there are some possible precipices that we could go down with it. Like if
yeah.
AI started to, for example, align itself with a authoritarian regime, so that it helps the authoritarian regime and vice versa, and they become an item, so to speak. That could be bad for a lot of people.
Yeah, it could totally be, and that's the importance of using it consciously, so that these programs do learn, and they are
Yeah.
kind of like a collective consciousness of users.
Mhm.
Users who have more higher integrity use
Mhm.
on ChatGPT will have a higher influence on the way it behaves than people who
Exactly.
are just using it for random things.
Yeah.
But if the general atmosphere on there becomes negative, it could influence it in that way. The
Mm.
problem with AI, though, is that if some authoritarian wanted to, like, they're going to be the ones who program the guidelines around it. Now, that's the scary thing because it's
Mhm.
already being used in war. I don't want to go down that topic today, but
Of
it is
course.
already being
Right.
used in drones and things
Right.
like that, right?
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
it's a scary thing already.
Already,
It's
very
already a
much,
scary thing because it
very
takes away
much.
human decision.
The
That's
future
why
is,
I don't think it'll fully replace humans.
yeah.
But if we don't recognize it takes away human decision and we allow it to do certain things,
Mhm.
then it can totally become
It
very
will, it
problematic.
will
That's
take
why you're hearing
advantage.
about people with psychosis from
Yeah.
AI because they're believing that they're some incarnate. I read like some profiles on Substack when I first started going on there of people who were like, I got messages from some AI people and they were really weird messages.
Mm.
They're not following me anymore because I only did a few posts that initially that were very AI based, and that kind of
Mm.
went back into my normal teachings
Right.
that mixed
Uh-huh.
AI and predominantly
Mm.
wellness. Um,
Well, it takes a lot more in some ways in this day and age to be a literate person than 100 years ago when you just had to read and write basically.
yeah,
And then we had the age of reading manuals and trying to figure out how to operate the stereo, and now we've got AI. so,
exactly. And it's how
so
we learn. We learn
yeah.
with it
Well,
and we adapt with it,
yeah,
or
exactly.
it can take control of your mind and tell you a whole bunch of stuff. If you don't question it, that's not
Hmm.
true.
Hmm.
At the same time, it can also help you, like I spoke earlier, with how it mapped out my neurodivergence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, Red, thank you so much for your time and your good spirit and energy. It's been very interesting, and I'm sure that our viewers, subscribers, have really got a good hit from your being here, being in the present moment with me. And I look forward to inviting you back again someday if you
oh, for sure.
feel like it. And when it goes up onto the Substack, I'll put your Substack address there so people can follow you
Perfect.
and then
Perfect. Thank
get
you.
in touch with you if they feel so inclined.
Thank you.
So, namaste,
Yeah.
Om Namah Shivaya. Have a good one.